You're one of several strategists for the DAP in the state of Perak. I'm assuming many of us don't actually understand how political parties begin the process of strategizing when it comes to, say, a general election or the state election. Could you perhaps just sort of sketch briefly the elements that go into developing a party strategy in, say, a state like Perak?
Well, essentially, there's lots of misconceptions of what a strategy is and what a plan is and what a manager should do in an election campaign. Now, a strategy is a general direction. How you decide a general direction is down to information around you. You gather information such as previous electoral information, demography, and all that kind of stuff. You put it together, you jumble it up in your head, you process it, you digest it, and then you come up with a direction that will best suit the outcome that you're gunning for. Now, once you've got that direction, you then look at what resources you have. Okay. Now, where we are in inverted commas opposition, resources are scarce. Though human resources is something that we pride ourselves of having a bit more than. Voluntary human resources, a bit more than other parties. Now, so in that case, you kind of retwig, because you can always have kind of first year, second year political science degree textbook stuff, but sounds very sexy most of the time, but in reality, it's hard work. Why I say it's hard work is how you want to translate theory into practice is very different. How you want to translate strategy into plan is very different. So lack of money, lack of resources, but a slightly more strong human resource gives you a slightly different campaign plan, slightly different route to the outcome. Okay. So, yeah.
Let's talk specifics here. Perak and its demographics. What is it that the DAP or the larger coalition that the DAP is part of, the Pakatan, right? How do they understand Perak demographics, and how does that affect the way in which they operate on the ground?
Okay, let's just be frank. When you're talking about Malaysian politics, or certainly Malaysian politics so far and thus far, when you say the word demographics, you're talking about racial breakdown. Now, I hate that. Absolutely hate that, but nothing can change the fact that that is essentially what you have to really, really look into. Perak, that we live in, that I live in, quite frankly, is a mini Malaysia, right? So you're talking about 47-point-something% out of the electoral roll, 47-point-something% Malay, 38 or 39-something% Chinese, and I think, if I'm not wrong, it's less than 10% Indian, and there's a small percent others. Once again, I hate using the term others because but that is very, very much so a mirror of the greater Malaysian picture. Now, when you're looking at that when you're looking at that picture or that demography, very often what people consider as a big Chinese proportion and big cosmopolitan proportion with big cities like Ipoh, with Taiping, is people think, oh, this must be an opposition stronghold. Now, it's easy for us to think that, but in terms of actually coming up with a strategy and actually deciding what's good for our goals, I speak for Pakatan Rakyat in what I'm about to say, is the fact that we're actually choosing to say, forget all of that. Just say what is right. Just do what is right. Just decide on policies and form policies and craft policies that are right for everyone. Because the day that we can really look at demography differently, we look at other things, look at income, look at education levels, look at income is actually a very, very, very big thing.
So questions of class?
No, not necessarily, because education and income and class is very different. I don't have a very high income, I don't have a low income in my background in business, but I would sound very working class.
You say you're working class?
I'm very working class.
Okay. Well, in terms of messaging then, so you have a certain demographic profile, it's broken down by ethnicity or by income and lifestyle perhaps, or even the language in which people operate. How does that affect the issue of messaging. And political parties are putting out messages, and clearly they will have to put out messages, different messages, not necessarily contradictory ones, but different messages or shaped differently for different demographic groups.
Yeah.
In Perak, what are the different demographic groups that are sort of around which messages are structured?
That's an awesome question, actually. It's something that political frontliners face every day. Let me give you an example. On Monday, the night before, I was in Asrama. I was speaking in Taman Cempaka, which is in this state constituency of Canning. That area has a very, very Malaysian demography, kind of 40% Malay, 30% Chinese, and 5 to 6% Indian. Now, what is bizarre about that is when you say you're a DAP at Rama, you generally see a larger Chinese audience. Now, I'm talking about back in 2008. On Monday, the drama that we held on Monday, it was a Pakatan Rakyat organised event, Pakatan Rakyat organised drama, and literally what we saw was very much so the real representation of racial breakdown. Now, how we craft that message, once again, I think it's time to break the mold. How you craft the message, what I've just said just now is the fact we need to stop saying A to A and B to B. Speaking Chinese to Chinese and Malay to Malay, a Malay message to Malay or a Chinese message to Chinese. We need to start spreading the Malaysian message, and that's what we've essentially been doing. Now, in the Common Policy Platform, we very much so openly embrace the fact that Bahasa Melayu is the official national language, and I speak for myself and a lot of other frontliners in DAP that we make a very big effort. We don't need to try because we're all fairly good in Bahasa Melayu, and we make a big effort to ensure that a big chunk of our speech, even if we're in a 98% Chinese crowd, of speaking Malay, because it's a lie that if you go into a Chinese kampong, they don't speak Malay. It's a lie. There are several kampongs that I constantly go to that when you have clap trappers in your speeches, everyone claps. So don't tell me that if you're in the Chinese area, don't speak Malay, because crap.
Okay. In terms of the campaign period, the parliament has been dissolved. We're looking at a period where there are a lot of things are going to be coming up. There's also going to be disinformation. There are going to be messages put out by your rivals in order to sabotage or thwart or negate the message that you're putting out. It is a fast-paced period where you probably have to change your message, or you have to tweak it in order to respond to what's happening. How do political parties do that? What is it that they're deciding to focus on when in the kind of heat of the hustings, as things kind of unfold towards polling day?
It's a common misconception that there's a big, huge body right on top who decides and vets every single message. That may possibly be how UMNO operates, that may possibly be how MCF operates, because they've got massive resources, big think tanks who craft their messages for them. They just kind of churn out stuff. I can give you personal experiences of how they do that. But anyway, from my angle, Pakatan Rakyat actually has a big kind of, we have a big focus on decentralisation. People join Pakatan Rakyat, people join DAP, people join PASBIC, people join PKR, people come into the Pakatan Rakyat fold because they believe in a set of ideologies. Now, it doesn't matter how you spin the message, if the ideology or the heart of the message is correct, you can say it in 10 different ways, but as long as you keep to the heart of the message, I think those people who are frontliners know how to spin it. But it's not necessarily spinning, it's about countering, as you said, countering the thwarts. Now, it's not going to be, that's been happening for the past 4 years. I can roll out right now at least 5 or 6 experiences that I've had in the last 2 weeks of how some very, very bad, very unacceptable, very illegal messages being sent out by frontliners on the other side, very racially stirring messages being spilt out in masjid, in just just really, sometimes these messages that I hear make me cringe. They actually make me angry. But we can't react per se by just going on the attack. We just have to sit back and think, okay, do we give them the attention that they're looking for, clearly, or do we just condemn it and just stay the course with what we're doing all the same? I think that's the decision to make.
Well, everybody's interested in the youth vote. It seems that because they are the future, because they're the people who are most open, maybe receptive to a new kind of politics, the one that you enunciated just now. What do you understand is the nature of the youth vote in Perak?
Just going to give you a glimpse of the numbers behind the whole youth vote phenomena. 1 in 5, round about 20% of new voters, newly registered voters, one in 5 out of the entire electoral roll in this coming election will be first-time voters. Now, out of that pool of 1 in 5, at least 76% of that is going to be the youth vote, youth being under 40. I know it's a bizarre number, being under 40 and called youth. I'm sure many people will be happy for that. But anyway, for all intents and purposes, first-time voters in youth vote play a huge, huge role. They're going to be the kingmaker. I hate using that term, but they're going to be the kingmaker. Now, how does one or a political party woo that vote? Now, it's not rocket science, okay? The new thinking, the new lifestyle, the new ideals, the new more globalized worldview attracts that kind of demography. So it just so happened that a lot of what Pakatan Rakyat stands for fits into that. Now, a lot of people say there are contrary policies within Pakatan Rakyat, contrary ideas within Pakatan Rakyat, but I'd like to challenge that. We all want good governance, all three parties. We all want clean governance, all three parties want that, and we all want a better tomorrow. And we certainly don't want the bad things, lots of bad things that's been happening over the last 55 to 6 years. So I don't know what's different about that. So if we can just home in on that message, and I think this is where it comes into the plan and strategy part, the deliverance or the delivery of that message, if we've started doing lots of kind of more funkier, more kind of dynamic ways of delivery, such as, we've got an Uber truck. I think,
you have a Gangnam Style video.
Oh, I didn't want to mention that, but that's quite cool. In fact, we had a dinner. We did a fundraising dinner about 3 or 4 weeks ago, where we pretty much had all the frontline leaders, the youth leaders, the Wanita wing leaders, basically on stage dancing to the video. And these are the things what inspires people, what intrigues people. With intrigue and inspiration comes engagement. And I think engagement with the right track, with the right methods, gets goals.
How do you win people over to your side? People who might have been hostile to Pakatan Rakyat in 2008, who perhaps are hostile to the politics of any of the component parties. How does a strategist think about winning new ground? Or does a strategist think merely about holding ground they have and trying to grab as big a share of the new entrants as possible? Do they ever say, okay, those people are lost to us, let's not bother? Or do they say, those people, maybe there's a way of getting to them?
Different players have different games. Different strategists have different ways of thinking. And the grounds in which you play gives you a big deciding factor on which way to go. Now, I am of the view that if for a particular seat, I repeat, this particular seat in Canning, in Perak, it's a very cosmopolitan area. We won here with 5,666 votes. I think at that time it was 31,000 voters, so it's a significant but not a huge majority. Now, in this area, leading from that now to the 13th general election, one would think that you would want to use this area as a leverage to firstly boost your existing majority to a higher level and use this as a beacon. So these are the areas that you have massive rallies, massive traumas, which we have done. and leverage on the members and the frontline kind of volunteers to kind of go into the less stronger areas to penetrate the stronger areas. Now we come to the whole idea of penetration. In terms of penetration, that you always need an introducer. You always need, let's say for example, you need someone you need a branch member from PAS in a Malay kampong who's been there for the last 20, 30 years, quietly doing his or her work, spreading his or her message. And now with the not quite so new anymore, Pakatan Rakyat, we work very closely together. I mean, I personally am very, very close with a lot of PAS members. We work extremely well together. And this isn't a political charade. I actually work better with a lot of PAS members than I do with the AP members. I don't know whether I should have said that, but who cares? The fact is, once you get that introducer, you sit with them, you talk with them, and you come up with a plan of what is it that they care about in that particular area. Now, I'm thinking with us wanting to expand, with us wanting a bigger majority, the only way of getting that is getting more votes. So by getting more votes, you're also building a bigger grassroots organisation building. So with that, leverage with a strong grassroots, you're getting by default extra voters and reaching out furthermore. So I think it's a win-win situation if you decide to do that. But that is all in proviso of there being a spark, the introducer. Like most organisational building, like most businesses, like most things really.
Thank you very much.